We are going to be watching ISC today. It looks like it's a good one. It's Zach, Mr. Zach, talking about, this is about, you remember last week, the week before last week, the ISC was talking about the different factions in Pyro. I believe this one is about how you will align with the factions in Pyro and how the factions conflict with each other, how they interact with each other in Pyro potentially. That is what I believe this ISC is about. I think it could be quite good. Let's do this.
What's the word I'm thinking of?
Murderous.
It's not. It's like it's not like, you don't want to say immersive, but it's visceral is probably a bit too much of a big word.
I love that word.
It's like, I'm thinking engaging. I suppose.
Tell us what you really think of the backers.
I suppose engaging.
Sorry, look at his t-shirt.
Is the word right? Like you're gonna get a much more like engaging
You hear this?
experience.
He doesn't think you know the word visceral, people.
Well, it's a lot of syllables for a bloke from Coventry. We have a 2-syllable cat where I'm from.
He's got a "This is Democracy Manifest" t-shirt. Shit, I didn't realize I needed a shirt like that. Excellent. Rest in peace, Democracy Manifest man. Hey, Corn. Welcome in. How are you doing? I'm doing well, thank you.
As the Pyro star system is lawless, this means that combat can break out anywhere. Social spaces can turn into combat spaces in the blink of an eye.
The main experience we're trying to build is something that feels a bit more like wild and not the typical thing that you've seen in Stanton. So the themes are a bit more chaotic than you'd expect. So for example, if you're shopping and then someone decides to take a firefight with you because they think your armor's cool and they want it, you can jump over that kiosk, sit behind that cover and return fire.
Man, I can hear 1,000 voices crying out at once, being suddenly silenced with the release of 4.0. Look, it's been made very clear. It's been made very clear from the get-go, from the beginning. 4.0 is different. 4.0 is built different. It's lawless. You're going to get killed. You're going to lose your armor. You're not going to complete your contracts. You're going to suffer. Hopefully, that means you'll have less suffering in Stanton, right? That's the hope for the people who aren't too keen on the lawlessness, the chaos of Pyro. Hopefully, Pyro will lift some of that weight, shoulder some of the burden. Until they all get bored in Pyro of killing people that fight back, they come back to Stanton, battle-hardened, even more aggressive, even more chaotic from their time spent in Pyro. And then they're just going to unleash even more pain upon Stanton. PTU when? Yeah, I mean, now we're in the waiting room for 4.0. It's exciting times now. It's exciting times.
So you're basically turning this shopping mall, which you were at previously, into a combat zone.
These spaces were built modularly with various different overlays that had to stitch together, but also make sure that it accounted for a fair combat fight and easy navigation for both vehicles and any other light elements that you want to be able to bring to these places.
That's interesting. They've built them with vehicles in mind. I really hope Pyro is where we start to see the beginning of some vehicle-centric gameplay, or at least, opening spaces to make vehicles a little bit more useful, a little bit more viable. At the moment, what are we using vehicles for the most part? People are using them to, for the most part, land outside of weapons range of outposts and bunkers and drive in, and that's about it. Drive back again. My thing has always been that they need to create more locations with anti-air weapons, anti-air missiles, anti-air turrets where you need to complete contracts, need to run missions and things, where the airspace is completely locked out, and the only way to approach is with ground vehicles. Like with bunkers and everything, you can still kind of approach with ships. But then you get into the territory of the A2, which basically solves all those problems. It basically deals with all those things better than a ground vehicle can as well. So we need also turrets that can shoot down A2 bombs. We basically just need a lot more reasons to go in on vehicles. You need the air to be inaccessible almost to make vehicles a better choice and more viable. I'm come back from 4 years SC hiatus. I just wanted to ask if Pyro is part of 324 or 4.0. 4.0, Tail from above. 4.0, my friend. Not 324. 324 is a little speed bump on the way to 4.0 at the moment. We need Gungan shields over the bases. Yeah, you know, I mean, we talked about that before. I would love to see something like that. I would love to see, particularly with player bases. I mean, they've talked about shields, right? With player bases, we need that Hoth experience where you need to take out that shield generator from the ground first before you can hit it from the air. That's the kind of gameplay we need. And yes, that is also a viable option. We need that kind of gameplay. It doesn't have to just be Pyro, but it could be tested in Pyro. Could come to Stanton as well. Make ground vehicles immune to sun flares. That was also one of my suggestions, Magnet, a while ago. They're not, though, I don't believe. I think they do still get shut down, but the difference is it's not fatal. So you do have a little bit of usefulness there for ground vehicles in Pyro, because yes, if you get shut down in a ground vehicle, yes, you can get shut down in a ground vehicle, but you're not going to fall out the sky and die. If you're in a ship, you will. So they have a little bit of breathing room there when it comes to ground vehicles. You can have a little bit more freedom during solar flares. You think about like in PvP situations, if you know you're going to be in an area for a prolonged period of time, an area that you don't want to give up, you don't want to leave early, you might want to put a few people on the ground in vehicles, because you know that if solar flares hit, you're not going to have to immediately either land or leave the area like you would in spaceships. Ground vehicles have a little bit more, they should have a little bit more permanence in an area. It should be a little bit better at like locking down areas because of that reason. But
as for the trade posts, because of their ever-shifting inventory of things they could sell, could buy, things being on display, this changes the layout of the trade post itself.
Taking everyday objects in the trading post, like weapon terminals, something that you would purchase, would then, as soon as a fight is initiated, that becomes cover. You would be using these things to help yourself to not get shot by the enemy, essentially.
So you could be ducking behind cover behind a ship component that you want to purchase for your ship later, but first you've got to take care of this rival gang attacking you. Then afterwards you can decide, hey, I need to grab a multi-tool for this other salvage mission I need to go to. So after the firefight is finished, you go to the counter, pick up your multi-tool with a salvage component, pay for it, chip's done, and off you head out.
how are they going to repopulate these places is also my question. How are they going to repopulate these places with NPCs after I've gone in for the first time and murdered everyone? Are we just going to be stepping into these places in Pyro and everywhere you go is just going to be corpses everywhere littered around the place? Players and NPCs alike. Well, I was thinking that, like, through lockers, TRF, but then does that make sense? Like, these are the civilians? I guess so. I guess it has to be lockers. That is the only option for now. You know, I'm really looking forward to them actually utilizing more of these drop ships to drop in and reinforce NPCs. We already have the tech in game. We know it works. Yeah, I guess that's it. Lockers. You're just going to be kind of sitting there, walk in a place, to be corpses everywhere, and then suddenly the locker door opens up and a couple of NPCs that are manning the desks and doing civilian tasks are just going to appear out and just repopulate their stations. You know, for a game that wants so much realism, it's going to break my immersion, actually, Chris.
Taking what we've learned and these setups from Squadron 42 to Pyro, for example, NPCs having specific archetypes and having more specific classes, using things like defend areas and keeping NPCs in specific areas, Pyro, we're taking that to the next level, where we're having more specific areas used for defenses and things like that, and making areas stay in NPCs. We're also using something called schedule areas, which basically enforces NPCs to stay within a certain vicinity in combat. For 4.0, with server meshing, we expect higher server.
We call those tethers in decade-old gaming terms, don't we? We call those spawn tethers.
Frame rates, so the idea is that you'll get a much more engaging AI experience. Let's talk about some of those classes. We have what we call our techie, which typically features light armor and SMGs, and they have more aggressive traits. So they're focused on getting close to you and flushing you out. Similar with our CQC class, which typically has shotguns, and obviously they have the much higher aggression version.
Classes, I like it. I like this talk.
We've seen us talk about traits at CitizenCon, and this is putting that work in the persistent universe and allowing us to create more dynamic situations.
Cool. Okay.
We're doing other things as well. For example, we're making NPCs hold up in rooms with shotguns and things like that. So when you have to eliminate a specific target and you're going into a room, those guys are specifically holding up there and you're kind of having a tug of war of them in close quarters environments versus them just kind of walking around the area. With our Juggernaut enemy, you'll have seen that that's the incredibly highly healthed LMG enemy, which ignores all shooting restrictions, can focus on pushing the player and shooting them out, and basically being that slow-moving
This is
target
totally
that walks towards
what
you.
the AI needs.
Similar, including things like Copions into battle. One of the factions has pet Copions, and Copions fight alongside them, and that is fantastic because it gives you a different silhouette when you're fighting these factions. You know, you have to shoot a lot lower, you have to be a lot more conscious because they're a lot quicker than a human being, and just these nice little new additions to combat. We're integrating more things in terms of having
snipers,
people who are more aggressive, having different factions, having different accuracy profiles, and making the factions in Pyro feeling a bit more versatile and different to when you fight each other. These encounters
Can they use
are a lot more
railguns yet?
crafted and bespoke.
Can they use railguns yet? It's very important.
Pyro is a system of conflict.
That's
and
cool
in there,
armor.
there's many factions vying over control. When you arrive at Pyro, one of the first things you want to do is enlist one of the two primary factions. The Headhunters have more tiered structured armor, which you can acquire.
Yes.
The more higher tiered the armor is, the more tanky and resistant those enemies are.
As a headhunter, you might be hovering around the Sunset Mesa, trying to think of how you're going to get close by. You would land your ships under the cover of darkness. You're taking your ground vehicle to the outpost. You're then getting out, trying to...
Why am I taking my ground vehicle to the outpost? Why am I going under the cover of darkness? What are the gameplay implications for this? Why do I need to do those things? Why can't I just fly over and bomb it all with an A2 and come in and pick up the loot? What are the gameplay reasons? The gameplay features that are going to force me to make those kind of decisions. That's where you get the depth out of the gameplay. Stop. I know they got to sell their ISCs. I know these ISCs are marketing, but we're past that point now. You know, I need reasons. I need reasons. It's called imagining because it's cool. Because you can't see anything from the ship and you need the lights on the vehicle to see. That's all right. Now we're getting somewhere. I would take that reason, TRF, any day of the week over because it's cool. Like Roscoe says and like the script says in this IC, you know, like what are the reasons I'm flying there under the cover of darkness and having to drive in? It's basic stuff when it comes to gameplay in video games.
Sneak past the outer perimeter and eventually navigating your way down to either the gas tanks or to the main landing pit itself and finding the exact critical point that would break the entire operation at the scrapyard.
Citizens of Prosperity have much higher and deadly accuracy. They also have more civil weaponry versus criminal weaponry as well, so you'll see things more like bearings and so on and so forth, versus other more lawless factions which typically have things like Castak arms.
If you're aligned with the Citizens for Prosperity, you might be given a mission to go to Russville and actually head down into the canyons and try to steal some of their scrap from their derelict ships in the base of the canyons. Because of Pyro 1's unique terrain where Russville is
they
located,
dropped him off.
you will need to get into your ground vehicle again, navigate through all the twisting canyons and ravines, and use your multi-tool to steal as much scrap as possible to end up sabotaging the unlimited supply of scrap that the headhunters at Russville have got.
So regardless if you side with Headhunters or Citizens of Prosperity, you will both be able to fight the Xenothreat.
These hate everybody. They are operating out of Pyro 2, 3, and Pyro 6.
The Xenothreat is more what you'd think of as a PMC in terms of how you fight them and how they behave. They're a lot more cautious, they're a lot more careful, you know, they won't try rush you out of cover, they play a lot more defensively. We can use our trait system to inform how they make combat decisions. So where you'd expect someone like the headhunters to be a bit more, run at you, push you out, the Xenothreat characters will be a lot more cautious and stationary and prefer to stay in cover and take long shots. And they'll have a much higher accuracy profile, but they'll shoot for much shorter durations, so they conserve their ammo a lot more.
Okay. It makes sense in principle, in theory. Sounds like, that's how they can make the AI a little bit more versatile, a little bit more interesting to face against, give you something to think about before you go in and fight a certain group of AI, a certain faction. Like, if I was going to go fight Xenothreat, knowing that they're all about accuracy and staying in cover and being a little bit more professional, then what am I going to do? Bring an A2, drop a Colossus bomb on the area, not have to deal with any of that shit. Or, I could just bring my own sniper team or my counter snipers, my own counter sniper rifle. Something where I can be more mobile. I'm not sort of pinned down by accurate fire and I can close the distance quicker. I don't know. Different ways to approach the factions and the mobs, but whether they should perform to these traits that they've been given is another story. Notice when the dev describe their internal play, it's always under these self-imposed thematic rules. To be honest, they've always come across as a little naive when it comes to player behavior. Definitely. But I also wonder if they have to ham it up a little bit. They have to ham up the ICs a little bit because it's marketing.
A place we're going to fight Xenothreat is at the Last Ditch settlement on Pyro 2. Last Ditch is another large, lawless settlement.
We have a town close by it and then different mining operations between the village and the mining tower.
And it's kind of a callback to the history of the system where there was once these mega corporations in Pyro that would do these large-scale mining operations.
It's a vital part in the Pyro ecosystem for these outlaw gangs to control. So we can also see here that there is fortifications, but they're mainly around the village from which these gangs operate.
But interestingly, it's almost built on 3 levels. There's like a main habitation area on top of this bluff, and then just down from that is the refinery area. And then right at the base of the super large mega mining structure is a small sort of extraction area in an old kind of quarry. Should make for some very interesting fights, especially as you move between those sort of 3 sub-locations within the larger location.
I hope that the player will get a sense of trying to stop Xenothreat with their evil deeds.
Shadowfall
too,
is
man.
another Xenothreat outpost. It's quite a large Xenothreat outpost that lives in the shadow of this mountain on Pyro 3 and kind of just sits on the shore of this lake.
This location hits different. It's a location just like the outlaw locations, but we can feel that things have been turned up further. It is not only is it chaos, but it is now a structured chaos.
There's fire and there's these spiked barricades that make up the place around it.
Within the homestead location, we have a lot of elevated positions that the player will look to. We'll see that there is a lot of scaffolding build-up, and it feels like a fortified position.
So in 3...
Yeah, so what you need is the sniper AI up in those, and you need them to be super scary. But you also need anti-air. You need some sort of anti-air. This is why it's, in my opinion, really important that the AI can start to use railguns and things. Because there's still nothing really stopping you from just coming in a ship, in a Redeemer, in a Gladius, and just completely nuking the place, killing everything that poses a challenge from the air, and then landing right on top of it and getting out and just sort of cleaning up. Really need some anti-air at these places to promote this FPS gameplay that they're trying to get you to take part in. Gamers will always just take the easiest route, and CIG's always feels like they've had this approach where they fantasize about how they want the players to approach their levels and their level design, but they don't actually create real reasons for you to approach the levels in that way. They don't think like players, it feels like a lot of the time. They either don't think like the players, or they just don't have the systems, the capabilities to funnel the players into the game style that they want you to take part in, into the gameplay they want you to take part in. If AI, if you imagine with the AI with their aimbot, essentially, their super good aim, With railguns, 3 or 4 AI with railguns at any site in Pyro would be terrifying, especially in a light fighter. You really would need to approach it from afar at that point, because you just never know where an AI could be. Before you know it, you'll be hit by a railgun, and that can already deal catastrophic damage, especially since they've reverted some of the changes, apparently. They're really powerful again in 324. These are all things that maybe are, again, could be a reality once they've developed it, once they've put it in, once server meshing frees up some resources for AI to do their thing. But these are the kind of things we really need to promote the sort of gameplay that they talk about. They tell us they want us to partake in, but ultimately players won't for the most part. They'll just take the easiest route, drop an A2 bomb on it.
23, we added sniper NPCs to the distribution centers. In 4.0, we're going further on that and adding specific watch nests and things like that to keep these snipers in. So you'll have to be careful and keep an eye on for these outposts and these high elevation where snipers could essentially hit you from. How we're validating combat is ensuring that the players can have a lot more stealthy approach, have a lot more overview of what their targets are doing and where they're going.
So you could use elevation to plan things out, such things as a comms tower, such things as cliff edges. You can basically survey over the trade post or the outpost itself. You could look at key things. Does it have automated weapon systems there? Does it have primary, secondary, and tertiary pathing to allow the player in?
It's all about defensive structures, about obstructing the player in order to get to its objective, with a lot of anti-air turrets littered around the location.
Okay. All right. CIG, you're listening. You're doing it. You're doing it. You're doing it. Anti-air missile turrets. Ooh, maybe we're on to a winner after all.
You are going to need to use your aerial support to take out these defensive measures so that you can even get people close to the location. Eventually,
What? Why am I using spaceships to take out the anti-air turrets?
Player in order to get to its objective, with a lot of anti-air turrets littered around the location.
you are going to need to use your aerial support to take out these defensive measures so that you can even get people close to the location. Eventually, you can pull in your ground vehicles, drop off an elite squad. You can stealth through the scrapyard, you can stealth via the nearby lake, come through the derelict outpost section, finally clearing out Xeno threat once and for all.
Well, until they come back.
From another outpost.
It's definitely a place that will just feel very hostile to the player. And you feel like this is a location that has a purpose within the universe and that it's important for these outlaw gangs to protect what they have going right here.
In 4.0, you can expect a lot more crafted, engaging combat experiences, with new archetypes, enemies using new weapons, fighting animals alongside humans, and all sorts of absolute crazy that you expect from Pyro.
Eradicate!
All right, Bosch.
Well done, Zach. Bonus is in the post, mate. Oh, dude, I feel like they got that a bit. They got that bit backwards. It should have been you come in with the Spartan and your troops, you take out the anti-air turrets, then you bring in the air support. Isn't that how it should have been? Yeah, it's like the reverse order. Anybody who knows me and my content and my org, this is the shit that we want to do in this game. We want the combined arms gameplay, the combined arms operations, the come on, guys, I want to go and do this mission today, but I can only do it because if I can get a guy in on the ground to take out the turrets, I can bring in the ship so I can get in with the troops. And then, combined arms, multifaceted gameplay is what we've been dreaming of in Star Citizen for years. We're nearly there. It sounds like we're nearly there. Like they almost got it. Anti-air missile turrets are here, but you shouldn't be bringing in your ships to get rid of them.
Well, what more can I add? We always knew there'd be a lot of combat in Pyro, but with the addition of more AI archetypes from Squadron and the anticipated performance improvements generated by server meshing, we're hoping to deliver an experience that's more dangerous, engaging, and heck, I'm not from Coventry, so I can say it, visceral for our players. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you. And we'll see you all here next week for a look at characters and creatures in 4.0.
Cool. I mean, overall, good stuff. Good IC again. These have been good ICs. Pyro is still, it looks amazing. You know, no doubt about it. It looks great. The environment, the set building, the narrative behind the different factions. I like it all. I like the idea of these traits. I like the idea of them using these traits, you know, they've talked about for a long time at this point, but I hope I can sort of see a character in the verse, see an NPC in the verse and say to myself, he's got this trait, he's going to behave this way, I need to react this way, or I need to be proactive in this way to deal with this threat, so on and so forth, right? Just like in any MMO where, you know, you see a mage or a tank or a rogue and you know how you're going to retaliate or you know how you're going to approach that situation. Not just like you do at the moment with every situation. As long as you have an SMG or an AR of some kind, you can pretty much deal with every single NPC situation in the game.